Hello friends, my name is Bilal Khan and today I'm going to be talking about my another lesson of the Rust book that is basically covering the reference and dereference. So let's go to the screen and I will show you there. So as you can see here that I'm present in the what you can say Visual Studio Code, and the first thing that I'm going to do is to open the terminal, and here what I will do here, I will write another directory, create another directory by the name of, let's say, cargo new 13 reference. All right, so reference, and this is the package name that is only going to be reference, because the package name cannot is not able to contain like the number initially, right? It has to be a pure like alphabets, English alphabets, right? So yeah, these are the this is the what you can say 13th lesson that I have that I'm going to be covering in this video. So the previous lessons were ownership, struct, that you can check them out in my previous video. But before going to this references and going to the practical side of it, let's open the Excel or draw chart in which I will be like just talking about that what is referring and what is dereferring. So these are the two concepts that you really need to keep in mind. So let's say this is X variable, and this X variable contains any kind of data, like it could be 1, 2, 3 or hello world, bye world, any kind of data that you want to save in it. All right, so after that, let's say this is called the X and this is called the Y. All right, so this is called Y. So what this Y does is basically let me just change this. Sorry, this is called Y, and now what this Y does is basically refers to this actual data of X. All right, so X contains any kind of data that could be 1, 2, 3. All right, and now this Y is referring to this X, and Y is the another variable that does not contain the actual data. Instead, it is referring to this X that contains the actual data. All right, so let me just write it like this: Y the variable does not contain, you can say, the actual data. Instead, it refers to the X variable that contains the actual data. All right, so I hope you understood. So Y is just a variable that is referring to this X in order to take the data from it and use it. All right, so this is what it is called, the reference of data, in which you does not own the data. Instead, you just refer to that like variable that this X variable contains the data, and now I should use it. This is what it's called, the reference of data. Now here is another concept also that is called the dereference of data. So what the dereference of data does is basically it refers to the what you can say here, it takes the data, it takes original data from X, but it does not go to the path of the like this. It does not go to this path like this. All right, instead it go to this path. All right, first of all it go to the this dereference of data goes to the path of the reference data, and then it is the reference data is pointing or referring to the X of data that it takes the value from it. All right, so yeah, I hope it made sense. Let me just first of all write it: dereference of data. So what the dereference of data does is basically contains the data, contains the in some cases, like in somehow that it contains the actual data, like this X of data, but it is not referring to this X directly. Instead, it first of all goes to the Y, and then the Y goes to the X. All right, so this dereference of data is basically first goes to the Y in order to take like the value that it is pointing to, and then the Y or the reference of data goes to the X in order to take the actual data. So yeah, from this point I hope you understood that basically Y, this Y is only pointing to the actual data. It does not contain the like the actual data, but Y, this dereference of data, does not own the data, but it still contains the actual data of X, but it goes through the path of first of all go to the reference of data, and then the reference of data refers to the X, and then it goes to the X in order to take the actual data. So if I give an example of this like in a simple way, let's say if you have a library and a person goes to the library and then that person borrows a book, after that the person can read that book, and after that he can in a library, but that person is not allowed to like modify that book or change that book or make some any kind of changes in that book, and that person is only allowed to read that book. So that person is called the reference of data. So it is called that it is only referring to the library that contains the actual data, and once the person completes the book, he can go to the library and return back to it, right? So this is what they call the reference of data. Now in another case, the dereference of data, what it does is that it is a person that can borrows a book from a library, right? It is a person that borrows the book from a library, but that person can modify it, that person can change it for their use case, that person can like highlight the like some of the text in that book. So that person is allowed in order to make some modification in the actual data. So from this point, I hope you understood that what is the difference between reference of data, that is only pointing to actual data, and the dereference of data, that is getting the actual data, but it is not owning the data. So the owner will only be one. So the owner is still the X, all right? So why this dereference of data does not own the data? It takes the actual data, but it does not own the data. The owner is only one, that is called X, but it is only taking the like the data. The dereference is taking the data in order to modify it, change it for their own use case. So I hope at this point it is clear now. So let's go to the what you can say here in the Visual Studio Code, and I will show you an example of it. First of all, let's say there is a main, and inside this main, let's say if there is X variable, and X variable contains the what you can say data that is called 10. All right, so X variable contains the data and owns it. All right, so this X variable contains the data and owns it also. Now let's say if I write Y, and Y is basically referring the data, and how it will refer the data, it will write it like this, %X. So Y is referring the data, reference of the data. Y is reference of the data. Yeah. So yeah, basically what it does, so %X is referring to this X. All right, so %X is only referring to this X, and then on the X, the actual value will be printed out. But Y is saving this what you can say reference of data, so that it has another value, right? So now if I write Y like this, you will see here that the Y will be 10, but what the 10 let's see if I go here in the cargo 13 reference sorry, and then cargo new, cargo run, and now you can see here that it is still printing the 10 to me, but it is not the actual data because it is only pointing to this X. The %X is only pointing to the X, and this data is actually printing. All right, so the X does not have any kind of data. Instead, this X is pointing to this X in order to take the data from it and then print it in the form of like Y variable. So yeah, this is what it is called, the reference of data. Now here is another catch, that is basically the dereference of data. So what the dereference of data does is basically, let me just write it like this, Y is equal to let's say, okay, let me just print it like simply like this, dereference from data. And now if I write star Y, then star Y will basically take this actual data. It is not point, or it will not refer to that data, but it will take the original data and it will go through this path. First of all, it will take the data from here, then it will point to this. All right, so this is what is called the dereference of data, reference of data. As you can see here, the dereference of data is also 10, but the difference is this, that this y is pointing to this x, all right, and this y is taking the data of x, but it is going through this path. Like first of all, you go through this y path, and then this go to the x, all right. So the path is like two-way steps, but the data is basically taking this original data. All right, so but you need to keep this in mind that star y is not having the ownership of this actual data. Instead, the x is the actual owner of it, but it is only taking the data of it, not through the reference, but by taking the data like through this path. First of all, go to the y and then go to the x. So yeah, I hope you understood from this point that what does it mean. All right. So if I write like this, it will also be working like, let z is equal to y, or if I let's say like this. Okay, this will be fine. Yeah, you can see here that now this y is basically the dereference of data that is stored in the a of z variable, and that z variable is called here. So yeah, this is what it's called, the reference and dereference of data. So let me just write it like this to make it better understand for you. Z is the dereference of data. So now the question arises that what is the need for even writing the dereference of data? Although the reference of data little bit makes sense that if you want to just refer the data, but what is the need for dereference of data if you can directly take the x? All right, if you can directly take the x from the data instead of just writing the z, why there is a need for it? So basically there, although you can still use the x variable, but if let's say if there are multiple y variables like this, let's say if there are multiple references of data like this, then in this case, if you have multiple references of data and from those references you, let's say you want the actual data, then you can use the dereference of data. All right, so I hope you understood that. Let's say if you have multiple references of data and from those references of data you want to take the actual data, then you can use the dereference of data. This is what the dereference purpose is. So yeah, as you can see here, multiple data, but from out of those references of data you took the actual data, that is called the dereference of data. So yeah, this is what the reason of the using the dereference. Now here are some limitations of it that I'm going to show you. Sorry. So let's say this is called the main variable. Let's first of all comment this. And inside this, what I will do here, I will write the, let's say x is equal to 10, and then I will write another variable that is called y, and that y is going to be taking the reference of data. All right, so the reference of data. All right, so now what it does, let's say if I want to modify this, all right, so if I want to modify this x, then what I will do here, I will simply write let mute, and then write mute here, ampersand mute, and then this x is able to now be modified. All right, so if I want to modify it, let's say if I want to add another number to it, then I can simply write, let's say y is equal to 1. So plus is equal to 1, basically it will add another number to it that will become 10. So let's run this. So basically I'm changing the reference. All right, so just to keep in mind that here you can see here that this is the actual data, but this is the reference of data. So I'm changing the reference of data, and now if I like print it, then you will see that what is the result it is giving me. Changing the reference of data, that is this one, y. All right, so now only the reference is changed, the actual value is still the same. So if I show you here, you can see here that this is giving me the error that cannot use this sign on string mute integer. So it can be used on integer if you dereference the left hand side. So what does it say? Basically it says that you cannot change the reference directly. All right, so if you are changing the reference, it means that you are changing the actual value. All right, so the reference does not have any kind of value. Instead, if you are changing the reference, then it means that you are changing the actual value. And in order to change the actual value, you have to dereference it. So this is the use case that I was talking about, that where the dereference is used. All right. So you cannot change the actual value. Instead, you have to first of all dereference the value, and after that the dereference will take the actual data, and then you can change that actual data to another value. So how you can change that to the actual value? By dereferencing it and by inserting the y in it. All right, so now it is dereferenced. It means that the x value is now taken in the dereference data, and now it can be changed. All right, so changing the dereference. Now it can be, let's change the message. Now you can see here changing the dereference of data, that is called 11, because the reference of variable cannot be changed because it is pointing to the what you can say actual value, and if you cannot change the actual value until you dereference it in order to change it. That's what the point of the what you can say dereference and the use case of it. So this is one point. All right, so this is one point that I wanted to make it clear. Let's say let's write it like this. All right, so let's comment this function. Sorry, this windows appear here. So yeah, you can only change the dereference. You cannot change, okay, you cannot change the, cannot change the reference of data. Instead, you can change the dereference in order to modify the actual variable. All right, so yeah, this is what is called the what you can say dereference of data. So the battery is going low, so what is okay, 5%. So now let's clear it like fast. So now the next point is basically is let's say what is called is yeah, so the next point is basically taking the function like main function, and now what I will do here, I will write x is equal to 10. All right, and then y is equal to 10 or ampersand of x. All right, so now it is referring to this actual data. Now let's say if I want to mutate it, how I can mutate it? So let's say if I want to like mutate it, and here I will also make it mutable. All right, so now this time what it will do here, let's say if I write z is equal to mutated x. So now as you can see here that two variables are called, and two variables are equal to the same reference, like the x and this x, and it means that in both of the variables the x is going to be modified. But here if I write let's say y, then what it will do here, it will give me the error, or yeah, so let's cargo run. You can see here that the first mutable borrow occurs here and the second mutable borrow occurs here. So it means that only one mutable can be called at this time. So it cannot call multiple mutable at the same time. All right, so you cannot change x multiple times, like you cannot change you cannot give the mutable x to different variables. Instead, you can only give the mutable x to one variable, and that is the limitation of the reference and the dereference. So from this point you need to clear this, that x is basically going to be mutable only one time, and that can be given to the one variable. It cannot be given to like multiple variables by having multiple mutation. So yeah, this is the point that you need to keep in mind, and this is the limitation of the reference and the dereference, so that it cannot it is not bound to have like it is not providing you that kind of like flexibility in order to change the values multiple times, just like in the actual value. So although you can change the x value directly, but you cannot save it as a reference to another variable in order to change it multiple times. This is the point. So yeah, let's say you can only mutate the reference one time. So yeah, this is the point. So from this video, I hope you understood that what is reference and dereference and what is the limitation of it. So from this video, I hope you understood, and I hope you like this video. So if you liked it, then make sure to subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions, then ask those questions in the comment section below. I'll be happy to answer all of them. So till then, goodbye.